Havana Valor followers, we're here with a really special family. We're here in Florida. I've known this family since 2016. But being here in their home, I've gotten to know so much more about their son, Scott. He lost his life in September of 2010 and September 26th specifically of 2010 on a convoy in southern Afghanistan near Kandahar. But we're here to learn more about Scott, not just about his death, but about who he was in his life and what he lived for and what he stood for. And I can't imagine a better person to talk about it than his mother and father. And I'll start here with one of the bravest men I know. Can you talk to me a little bit about Scott's life?
Well, I can. He was one of three. I have another daughter and I have another son. We lived in about 20 miles north of Cincinnati, Ohio, in the small town called Blue Ash, Ohio. He grew up there and went to Sycamore School District. Loved it. Played baseball. Was crazy about baseball. Actually, I was their coach for a while. As he grew older, when he got into high school, he worked at Kroger's originally as a bagger. He liked that, but that just wasn't Scott. You couldn't see him just doing that. So he went to work for the rec center there in the city of Blue Ash, and he really liked that. He got to work with different people. And here we found out later after his passing that he had a big impact on a lot of the kids there with special needs. He took the time to spend time with them, to play basketball with them, to play with them so they would have a good time too. Which those are things that you don't ever realize or find out about it until something like this catastrophic in our family happens. But he, your typical kid, him and his brother got into trouble. They would go to the biggest thing, I guess, the scariest thing was there was a yard sale down at the end, and they wanted to buy this game, and they came back and they said, "Oh, they got a game we need to buy." So, give them a couple dollars. They go down there and bring it back, and here it's yard darts. But it's truly the yard darts with the metal ends, not what they have the plastic ones now, and I said, those boys are being awful quiet. What's going on out there? And here they're throwing them at each other, and it's just a typical boys, you would expect that from somebody like that, Yeah. Yeah. And that was like, wait a minute, this isn't right. You're not supposed to do that, So that had ended up taking that game away from him. And then they had a game of darts. They had a dartboard and they went outside and throwing at the dartboard was not good enough for them. That's when they really started throwing as they would run into each other. And Scott actually got hit right and just on his left side of his chest. And he comes walking in the house and this dart is moving around. It's like, okay, stop before something really, we don't know what's going on. So luckily we was able to unscrew the plastic part of it, but the metal thing was still in there. So we had to go take him to the hospital and get an x-ray of it, and thank God there was nothing serious about it. Yeah. And they were able to just pull it out. But typical boy stuff, he grew up, like I said, in just outside of Cincinnati. He loved the baseball, loved Cincinnati Reds. He loved the Bengals. He was a diehard Bengals fan through and through. The thick and thin, the good, the bad with them. He stood up for the Bengals.
An athlete, right?
Yeah.
I read in a letter that he wanted to go to the World Cup in Rio in 2014 after that.
He was really big into soccer.
Yeah.
And he was definitely probably the most competitive at any sport. In video games, he had, if he lost, he had to have a rematch right then and there. He was not going to let it in. He was very competitive with even everything that he did.
Chelsea was, I think, his favorite soccer.
Forgive that.
Yeah.
Yes, he was definitely a humongous Chelsea fan. But yes, he did have dreams just like everybody else. You could tell that he did want to see things. Then he joined one of his best friends in high school. right out of high school, he joined the military. His name was Brandon Hunter, and he was there a year, 2 years, year and a half. Sometime through his deployment and his tour, his Humvee was hit, and he was killed. And Scott took that very hard because they were best friends.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
all through high school they grew up. Of course, you know, they grew up in a neighborhood together, so it's not like, you know, you wouldn't see them. They were together all the time. You know, they played baseball. So Scott came to me to the firehouse one day and said that he wanted to join the military to finish out Brandon's tour for him. And you know, I kind of stepped back a moment and thought, you know, it's active wartime, and you know, joining the military probably isn't the best thing to do, but you know, I told him that I was behind him 110%. It's like I was, you know, not going to deny him of that, because I didn't want him to regret it, or me to regret it the rest of my life, that I, you know, told him not to do something that he really, his heart was set to do. So with that, he joined. He signed up.
Same MOS as Brandon?
No, he was in a different one. He went to the combat engineer, and I don't know how that he picked that one, if that was helped by the recruiter, because he went with my ex-wife to the recruiter, and they're the ones that picked that out. Yeah. I didn't know what it was until after I got looking into what the combat engineer does, is what I truly found out that what he was going to be doing.
Yeah, I think it's one of the 6 oldest MOSs in the military, and it dates back to pre-America, from what I've read about the sappers. From the, I guess it would have been the British Army back then. Whoever we were fighting against. It's one of the oldest MOSs out there.
Yes. So he signed up. He had his date to go up to Columbus to actually sign on the dotted line and get on the bus and go to wherever they were going to send him for his training, and he failed.
Okay.
He was a little overweight, and apparently his neck size was too big. So they kicked him out, basically, and he came back home, and he worked very, very hard to lose some weight, to get within the standards that it had to be, and he made it. He got in, and because I remember driving up to Columbus the day that he was sworn in, and he got on a bus and was telling me he's going to Fort Leonard Wood, and that's, I didn't see him for 6 months because he was, they were there and training and everything.
Lost in the woods in Missouri.
Lost in the woods, that's what they called it, yes. So then, after he graduated from there, we went to his graduation, and we thought, we'd get to spend some time with him. We got to spend about 6 hours with him the night before graduation. And then they graduated, and we thought, good, we'll be able to spend the rest of the day with him. Well, as soon as they graduated and you looked out in the parking lot, all their gear was already on the ground, already separated, and whatever line your gear was in, you get on that bus and they take you away. So
he graduated boot camp, was already chalked to deploy?
Correct. Well, not to deploy, but to go to their bases that they were going to.
For AIT?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So then we found out that he was going to Fort Hood, Texas. So he was going to be in Fort Hood. So, it's like, hey, that's not too bad, I guess,
Yeah.
So he was there. I went and visited him once during his time there. He had a vehicle when he was down here in Ohio, and I trailered it all the way up there so he could have something to get around in, because he was... they were able to get off base and do some things. And again, you're in Texas and you hear about all these. They went to Houston, I guess. The big street party or whatever, Stockyards or whatever is up there. So they were.
And Austin wasn't that far either.
Yeah, and his best friend was from Texas, so that
Austin,
made
Dallas area.
He made things worse because he was from the area and he knew where all the good or bad hangouts were. Where to go to, all the nightlife and everything else. So. They did that. So then I'll let Kelly talk to a little bit more about after, just before their deployment, they had to go to the Ready Center for their shots and all their information to make sure they had all their stuff before they were deployed.
Yeah.
So I'll let her go from there to.
Yeah. On that, Kelly, what do you have to say?
Well, one day in particular, I was at work. I came home, and Don was like, "Be quiet. I got to watch the TV." I was like, "What is going on?" He was out on the range in Fort Hood when there was the incident at the Ready Center with a soldier by the last name of Hussein, when he went in and
oh my gosh,
was shooting at the Readiness
Major
Center.
Hussein,
Yes.
Yeah.
Psychologist, supposedly.
Correct.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And Scott is calling and texting us and saying, "Hey, what exactly is going on? We were on the range. They took our weapons away. They stuck us in the motor pool garage. They told us not to leave. What's going on?" So we were relaying what we were seeing on the news to Scott. So that was our first kind of scare, because they had been in the Readiness Center the week before.
Wow.
They actually had some of their unit that was in the Readiness Center at the time, because they had missed the week before. They were out on R&R, whatever, for some. So we think one of them was injured. Nobody from his unit was killed that day, but that was kind of scary for him to call us and be like, "Hey, tell me what's going on," because all they did was take our weapons away.
There's a female soldier who we are scheduled to talk to whenever we get to Arizona or New Mexico. I can't recall which, who was shot in that day.
Yeah.
Arizona. Mary
Yeah.
J. Herrera.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it'll be
The brains of the
interesting.
operation.
It'll be interesting to see what she also says about that day.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. And he was on the range, and
Yeah.
if I remember the news right, that psychologist had been messing with the minds of soldiers for a very long time who were coming to see him for PTSD, and then just snapped and executed
Right.
who he could.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I believe it was 7.
They do have a memorial.
Yeah. I don't remember how many, but I know there was 7 to 10 that actually were killed that day.
Yeah.
Which again, like what Kelly said, that's our first experience of, oh my gosh, your heart's skipped a beat where something happened, and I'm thinking, man, that's even on American soil, and this happens.
Well, and part of the problem too was that I guess he ran from the building, so nobody knew where he was on base.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, where is he?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that Scott was wanting us to tell him was where, but nobody knew where he was.
Yeah, or if he was by himself, or if there was more involved in it than just one person. That was another, question mark that they kept asking on. I remember on the news, oh, is this, just a lone wolf, or is this other people involved in this? So they really didn't know. That's why the whole lockdown, everybody accounted for and in safe areas, I guess. So that was the big scary thing. That was one. So
well, in novels and movies and stuff, they always talk about foreshadowing, and it seems like y'all had a pretty rough wake up call that day, but maybe it was at the expense of the fallen soldiers that died that day. But for you as a family, maybe that shakeup helps you down the road.
I don't know. I can't believe that it did. I mean, it's just more
reality.
Yeah, I think it was more reality check, knowing that you just assumed he was safe, but he's not as safe as you really would think. So, on a military base that's fenced in with guards at the entrance and limited people access in and out.
With a vetted commission.
Yeah, correct.
Executing enlisted soldiers.
Yeah,
correct. It's that was a little hard to comprehend that something like that could happen. But everybody has their point, I guess. So,
No, I don't see his point at all.
well, I mean, yeah, no. I should say they're breaking point, you know, and I don't know what this guy was doing or anything like that. You just can't justify it. I don't care how you look at it. I don't know if there's any things stories or anything you can think
Other
about,
than-
Scott, that,
How old were you when you came into his life?
So I came in at 2009, so about the time he was leaving for boot camp.
Okay.
And so I have two girls. The one was like a senior in high school. Probably one of the best parts was that just to show his competitiveness, he would have things with like co-ed teams where my daughter was athletic, the younger one, and he would call her and say, "Hey, I need a girl to play whatever they were playing, volleyball or kickball or whatever."
Yeah.
And I looked at Don and said, "He's just looking for a ringer. Does everyone else know that?"
Yeah.
And we asked Scott one day. We were like, "Do these people know like she's athletic?" And he's like, "No, we're not going to tell him either. She's my ringer."
he was rigging the system, you know. He was
He's
again
like,
the competitiveness. It was definitely in his blood. He was.
I mean, if I'm going to play 2-on-2 basketball, I'm going to pick the tallest male or female in the room.
Right.
5'6".
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Setting yourself up.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
And he actually some of the things that I remember that he made sure that he treated her like a sister.
He did.
He was very, very good to her and Fallon and her other daughter. But Casey was, I think, Scott special, that he made sure that nobody did anything to her if they were at the games or anything like that.
He was the only one allowed to razz her.
Yeah.
You know.
So it was very good that they got along so well.
So I gathered that from some of his letters from Breedlove and one of his other battle buddies, that he was a protector through and through. And
yeah, and he was easy to talk to.
Yeah,
you know, if he sensed that you needed to, you know, he could just get you to talk, say, you know, so. And I think his other unit buddies would say the same.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Did he deploy with the same group, or
he did? Yeah, he did deploy with the same guys that he was stationed with at Fort Hood. So I guess fast forward to, they got their deployment papers and they were going to be shipped out January of 2010.
Okay.
To Afghanistan was the only information, of course, that I was given.
For a year at that time?
For it's supposed to be a 12-month deployment, for 1 year in Afghanistan. And, you know, of course, it's limited to what they can tell us and everything else, which I understood that. So it was kind of like, oh, you know, this is really going to happen. You know, again, one of those moments that, okay, you know, hopefully this is okay. And so he said they're loading all on a big plane. He said it, and they were flying to Siberia or something, because he said when they got off the plane, the only thing they had on was just their shirts and just, you know, normal what they had when they left Texas, because not expecting it to be like 15 below zero and so cold out and so much.
Kyrgyzstan. I bet they were in Manis, Kyrgyzstan.
So they may have been, but he did definitely say that it was so cold.
They couldn't get their bags open and put on enough layers to stay warm.
I've been in those shoes. It's a country called Kyrgyzstan. It's former Soviet, and it is in the mountains and it's absolutely freezing. Every time I've been there.
Yeah, so I guess they had you know, a layover there or a stop. So they were So he told us about that, and then so from there, then they finally made it to Afghanistan in the FOB that he was stationed at, where he was going to be. Our communications with him was limited just because of course, internet access and being out there and everything else. So every now and then he would get up on Facebook and we'd see that, you know, that he was on. We'd able to ask him a question or two, and you know, he'd give us a brief, you know, nothing an explanation or what's going on. And
the conversation usually was, "How are you?" He'd say, "Fine," and he'd say, "What are you doing today?" to get away from us asking him any other questions.
right,
Right. What are you doing today? What's the weather like? What's it always turned in. He was always asking those kind of questions.
And then
makes sense.
Go ahead. Yeah,
makes sense. I was going to say, from my experience, when I was asked similar questions, when you're in country, you just put everything in its own little box and put a neat little lid on it so you can continue to do your job. But
right.
when he came home on R&R, you probably saw that there was a lot left unsaid over the phone.
Yeah, you
For
could.
sure.
Yeah, that was definitely noticeable when he did come home for that wedding that he was going to be in. So, so then he somehow he ended up with a phone. I'm not going to disclose how he got it or anything like that.
That's the name of the phone.
But all of a sudden, I would get a phone call, usually on a Sunday, and then it had 12, 13 different numbers on it as far as a phone number coming up. And I'm thinking, this is so weird. What is this? And it was him calling me from his personal phone. So we were able to speak, which was good. And it was usually brief. It wasn't, it wasn't long, and it wasn't much about what was going on over there or anything like that. It was just, hey, everything's fine here at the house. This happened, or something that, I thought he would be interested in finding out about it. And he'd ask about the family, of course.
Yeah.
So, we would talk.
In February, he called you and said, "I need you to order flowers for this person, and this person. Take it out of my account." They were for Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
So he bought for
3 different girls.
Yeah.
well, one was me.
Oh.
Yeah.
One was no. I don't remember who but there were 3 orders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, "Can you just take care of this for me?" So actually, it was turned over to me, and I took care of it for myself.
So he did go to prom, of course, and there was one girl that he really liked. That was one of the girls that he sent the flowers to make sure that she got it. So that was kind of it's pretty cool, that he's really thinking of her still over there, which was good. Yeah. So when they were deployed in January of 2010. He did come home for R&R for a wedding, and we could tell, like you said, a little bit of a difference. I noticed that he was a little more skittish, that he was concerned about people behind him or coming up to him, something like that, and he did, talk about some things that he could without revealing a whole lot of information, but some of the things that I guess bothered him that he had to do, and that's what I told him. I said, just think of it that way of, you have to do it, get it done, and then, come home,
And that was when he told us he would not re-enlist.
Yeah.
That he was done.
Yeah. It was his original plan to finish his contract out with them, and he was going to get out. He was, and then he would just do, of course, his, what do they call it now? The reserves. Yes, he was. Yeah, he would do his reserve time, just something like that. So,
but even when because we were actually at the wedding and we had rented this big house, and we'd wake up every morning and new people would be there sleeping somewhere. But we would cook dinner, and he would say, "My parents cooked," so he'd just point, "You're doing the dishes tonight." My parents are not allowed to do the dishes.
I love it.
He was like, "Yeah, they cooked. They're not doing dishes too."
Yeah. Or when we first got there, it's like my parents get the biggest bedroom with the bathroom
because they arranged all of this.
Because they're not going to have to worry about anything else. So again, you could just tell a little bit of a difference in him, that he had more confidence, and he I don't want to say orders, but he made sure that everybody did their fair share,
Yeah.
So,
well, I read from the supervisor that he would have made a great NCO, and they were really looking forward.
Yes, that was one thing, like you said before, that he was very well liked. He was easy to talk to. He was a great listener as far as anybody's problems, and helping anybody out at any time of the day or night. If you needed something that he could help you with.
But I think he also knew how to get people to do, if he wanted them to do something, he could not order them to do it, but he could talk to them, and then they would just go do whatever he needed them to do. He wasn't bossy.
Yeah. Well, he was developing a level of charisma that he can get soldiers to do what he wants to do.
Right.
Without
them knowing that
that's the mark of a true leader.
Right.
To make them want to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
So his roommate, Richard Hendershot, was a younger. I think he was 18 at the time.
Remember, you took him to Six Flags.
Yeah,
and he couldn't drink.
Yeah, he couldn't drink. Couldn't buy a beer, but he could, to sign his name to be in the military. So, so he was his roommate, and Richard. I don't want to say he fell short, but some of the things, like his name tag was crooked, and some of the things. And Scott always made sure that he would pass inspection. He would help him out to pass inspection and to get by. And
I don't know if
else.
some of that's because Richard used to ask him to
Yeah,
double check.
I don't know how that.
But Richard didn't want to get anybody else in trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
Because his name tag was crooked.
Yeah. So he again, it just goes to show what he did and how he would help.
Yeah.
So
that doesn't fault Richard. That I always
Right.
see the
No.
military. Every branch is a microcosm of our society.
Right.
There's a lot of people from every branch, to include really smart ones, that I had to help with. Seemingly, I guess, common sense things along the way, but
Right.
everyone comes from different worlds. And
Right.
You look out for
Right.
your battle buddy, right?
yeah,
Right.
and absolutely, yes, that was his huge thing. So he was deployed, and after he went back home from being here for the wedding, he contacted me on my birthday, the 23rd of September. He called me. I was at the firehouse working, and he wished me. He said, "Hey, Dad, it's me." And I said, "Yeah, I know who it is."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "I could tell by the phone number." And he called and wished me a happy birthday, And then September 26th is when we received the message that he was killed.
Yeah, that was how many days after?
It was 3 days after my birthday. So,
Scott was good about calling people on their birthdays.
yeah.
Well, thank God he was, so
Yeah.
you got to hear his voice.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When was the last time you had talked to him?
My birthday,
Okay.
which was September 15th.
Okay, so
Yeah.
everyone had gotten to hear his voice. And
Yeah.
Right. So we, it was, I want to say 2:30 or 3:30 in the morning. We had a knock on the door. The worst thing, you could ever expect.
so it's like the movies.
It's yeah.
Actually, I probably think I remember other things that he doesn't remember.
Yeah, there's things of that day that.
Right. It was weird because we had gone to bed and I remember seeing lights and I thought, did somebody just pull in the driveway? But just kind of shrugged it off,
Mm-hmm.
and then we went to sleep. And then the doorbell rang. And I remember Don, in his fireman fashion, being able to throw clothes on in a matter of about 10 seconds.
Was there a pull from the bedroom?
No pull from the bedroom. But we were on the second floor, so if you walked to the top of the steps, you could see through the window in the front door. And I specifically remember him turning and say, "There's 2 dress uniforms at the door."
Yeah.
And I want to say I vaguely remember him saying, "This isn't good."
So I remember looking out. I remember seeing that. I think there was probably 12 steps to get to our second floor. I think maybe I stepped on 2 or 3 to get down. When I opened the door, there was 2 full dress uniform military personnel standing there. And I flat out told him, "There's no way. You got the wrong house."
This is a dream. Can you wake me up?
This you're at the wrong place. It's not the right place. And then they said some words, but that is where, for me, I don't remember everything they say or what they said to me. You see in the movies they say on behalf of a grateful nation or we're sorry something. I don't remember that part. If they did say that to me, I was definitely in denial.
Yeah.
Not believing it was true. And then they came in, and one was a clergy, and the other was an officer from somewhere, I believe, from Wright Pat. They came down,
and probably like a casualty. I forget the name of it.
It wasn't a casualty. It was whoever notified. So it was a clergy, and then somebody from Wright Pat.
Yeah,
or from Tennessee, Fort Knox. One of the two.
So like I said, that's when my mind kind of. I don't remember a lot of that stuff. I remember going down the steps. I remember opening the door, and I remember, you're at the wrong place. It's not. This is true. There's no way that this is true. And then what they said after that was, I don't remember a lot of the stuff that they said. My mind shut off, I guess. Somewhere along the communication gap was somebody would be getting in touch with us later the day, and we'd been assigned a casualty assistant officer. Which okay, I'm fine with that, I guess. And it seemed like hours and hours and hours before I even got contacted by anybody.
No, remember, we had to call because that casualty assistance officer never contacted us.
They never contacted us. So we went.
It was like after they said they would contact us by noon. In the morning before noon or something. It got to be like 1:00 and we hadn't heard anything.
Yeah. Now my
did you start thinking it was possibly a mistake?
Well, my ex-wife was assigned a casualty assistant officer, and she had already spoken to hers.
Okay.
So my daughter told me that they've already talked to Mom about it, and I'm still waiting to hear from anybody, about this. And so I had a business card, I guess, from one of the guys that was there, and I contacted them, and someone finally showed up later that day. But it was probably not only the worst experience for us, but for him too, because it was his very first dealing with this on his own.
Oh my God.
Other than training, with somebody else or however they prepare somebody to do something like that.
I don't know.
He was lost.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I had so many questions, and he had no answers, and he didn't know how to get them to me or anything like that. And I had to contact him for so many things, and I got actually more information from the casualty assistance officer that my wife was assigned than mine for the first couple of weeks.
And actually, this casualty assistance officer would say, "Let me go ask." I can't even remember names at this point. Let me go ask hers. Okay,
Yeah.
go ask hers and let us know. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
Well, since we were divorced, she had her own, and I got my own, and it was very frustrating, that portion of the whole deal. Just because I had questions and I was not getting answers, and he even said, this is his first one, and I get it. It's just it was really bad experience.
Yeah.
So as the process went along, and then we finally had the date of the dignified transfer from Afghanistan to back here to the States, to Dover. They did fly us all out, my ex-wife, myself, and then the two kids. They flew us out to Dover. They flew us out the night before, and we stayed the night in a hotel somewhere right next to the base or on base. I'm not sure exactly which one. And then we went to Dover. And the other, the person that was killed when my son was Sergeant Mark Simpson. So his wife and his 3 little girls were there. So we met them. didn't, she was very distraught, and now she's got 3 kids by herself, and he had just got transferred into that unit about 2 months ago, prior to this happening.
Wow.
So of course they removed Sergeant Simpson first, and then their family was able to come back into the building, and then we walked out to the tarmac out there as they transferred Scott from the vehicle to from the airplane to the vehicle that transported him into the building. And then after that, it was okay. This is what's going to happen, and then they put us on a plane and flew us back to Ohio. And then I was notified, I guess maybe 4 or 5 days later or something like that.
It seemed like longer than that. That whole time span either went really fast or it seemed like it was an eternity. I don't know.
Yeah, so they notified me because I was the pad and I was going to escort him home. So they told me the date, and I was signed and someone here to pick me up from Ohio, take me to the airport, to get me on a plane, and then I met somebody from Dover once I was at that airport, and they took me to Dover, again to a hotel. I don't know if it was on base or not. Again, this is I just remember it just seemed like a forever ride from the airport to Dover to where the base was, to get there. Then of course they told me what the itinerary was as far as the times and when I had to be ready and where I had to be and things like that. So
I have a little insight. I worked at Dover in that mission. It was one of the hardest ones I've done. I don't know exactly where your hotel was, but Dover Air Force Base is a little bit geographically removed from everything out there. So you were probably somewhere in the town, but I think, well, I have a lot of things that stick with me from that tour. It was obviously not combat, but it was hard on my soul being there. But the meticulous attention to detail for every soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine, and it's also such a beautiful, beautiful process. Everything.
yeah, I looked that up. I wanted to know what the process was, and they were very, very respectful of every person that comes through there, which that was kind of put my mind at ease a little bit. But in the process from when we came back from the dignified transfer for me going back there, of course now we're planning a funeral back in Ohio for him. And I was with the fire department at the time, and of course the city, when they found out about it, they wanted to do something. So the police department got involved. They wanted to do something about it. So then it turned into be a rather large, and I don't want to call it an event, but a rather large scaled operation between fire departments, police departments, and everybody.
Celebrate his life.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. So
Don was actually working full time for Blue Ash, part time for Montgomery Fire Department. Okay. So between Blue Ash and Montgomery, and the police departments in both, when Scott was eventually transferred to the funeral home, between both fire departments, police departments, there was at least minimum of 2, either police or fire or somebody that was at the funeral home sitting with Scott from the time he got to the funeral home until after the funeral.
Yeah. So we
first responder on watch the entire time.
Yes. Yeah, so it was the same as the military would do. Yeah. No one was left alone.
Yeah.
Just like the escort that I had coming from there with him. So that was all planned and everything was ready to go. And when we had a decision on where we were going to fly in, what airport, because we were flying in on a private jet, and we found out that they were having an air show at the airport that we wanted to bring him in on. And
no, it was Lunken.
Yeah, Lunken Airport. It was close to to where we live. It's a private airport, or not a private, but not like CVG or anything like that, so it wouldn't have been an issue. And then here to find out there was an air show, and the decision was made that instead of adding this is turning into like a spectacle or something like that. So we didn't want to do that. So then I had options of, well, what other airport do you want to come in at? It's like, well, I don't know, a whole lot of other airports around. So then the suggestion was Butler County Regional Airport, which that was 20 miles maybe from.
Maybe a little farther than that.
So maybe 25 miles away. So but there was nothing going on there, and it was a nice, private airstrip. It could handle it, and so it was that the fire department was going to be there, and they were with the police, and they were going to escort us from there back to Blue Ash, to where the funeral home was that we were using.
Yeah.
But the morning of, I got up and. I walked out to the tarmac, and of course the sun was just rising. So I was just standing there looking at that, and the pilot came up and said who he was, and asked if there is anything I needed, and I said, well, there's not much, but I said, could you take the long way home? I wanted to take the long way home because. The more time I could spend with him. So.
Did he do it, the pilot?
I have no idea.
I'm sure he did. Don.
And that's another part that I don't remember. I remember them putting the coffin into this private Learjet. Mm-hmm. I remember climbing up into this Learjet. There was a pilot and a co-pilot, and there was a seat here and a seat, kind of catty corner from one another, and then the casket was in the back. And apparently this was a private company that I don't know if the government was contracted to them or if they did it on their own or how, but he was going to be on a private plane instead of being put in a cargo hold of a passenger. So I remember getting in the airplane, and to this day, I do not remember taking off. I do not remember the conversation in the airplane because the
flight attendant?
Yeah, well, not the flight attendant, but the guy that's with him.
Co-pilot?
No.
Oh, his escort.
His escort, correct. Yeah, the escort from the military was there, and I talked to him, but I don't remember taking off. I don't remember landing. That portion, I guess I put it out of my mind or something. I don't remember that. I remember taxiing to the off of the runway back here in Ohio. I remember looking out the window, seeing the fire trucks from my city. Mm-hmm. The people that were there gathered.
You're still surreal.
So yeah, so it's still, this is for real now. It's like this has happened. So I remember getting out of the airplane. So they removed him from the airplane, and they took him from there to put him in the hearse that we had from the funeral home that we had picked. And the funeral home was very, very good to us. They did everything that, anything that we asked for. They made sure that we had accommodations for. They asked going back, is there anything special? And I said, well, we'd like for him to drive by the house. So they actually drove by our house.
They actually stopped.
Yeah.
In front of the house.
Yeah. Because our house was probably 3 miles from where the downtown area in the city was, and that's where the funeral home was, where we were having him taken. Now this was I believe it was a Thursday or Friday when we got in.
And there were people actually outside of our house.
Yeah, so there was people knowing that he was coming in town, and they actually, were in the streets. But to get back to Kelly's point was when we left out of the hearse to go inside to the funeral home, that is where he was never alone. There was always somebody with him. And I want to say it was a Friday because I remember all hours of the night and day. I would say, let's go see Scott. So we would go up and we go to the funeral home. They, like I said, they were very gracious. They left it open to us to come in and out anytime we wanted to.
Yeah.
To be there, So that was very nice. And then of course the service was held at the rec center just due to the fact of the amount of people that were going to be there, knowing that they needed the space. So that was from there to the rec center, which maybe a mile and a half.
Yeah.
The procession went to there, and then they had the service at the rec center, where I want to say she was a 2-star general. She offered her condolences and stuff like that, and spoke. And then we left from there to Spring Grove Cemetery in Cincinnati. We, as a family, we decided that we wanted him to be buried in Ohio.
Yeah.
This is where it kind of gets logistically kind of crazy, just due to the fact of there was probably 20 fire trucks, there was probably 30 or 40 police cars,
It was
Community just
because of
Yeah,
of the fire department community,
yeah.
the police department community. When we left and we were headed to Spring Grove, like all the overpasses had like people on them, or fire trucks stopped on them,
Yeah.
or something. Which there are pictures that we have.
Yeah.
We had people taking pictures, and then afterwards they'd hand us stacks of pictures, and we wanted you to. We know you're not going to remember all of this, and we wanted you to have these. So we do have a lot of pictures of that.
Yeah.
Of that
Yeah.
time, about that procession, and the amount of police and fire, and it was
The amount of love. It sounds
Yeah.
like,
yeah.
I bet that's testament, if I were to guess, well, to Scott himself, but also to your civil servant duties that you did for an entire career as a firefighter.
right.
And on that note, you look like a real tough guy. I know that you are. And firefighter training, I've never been through it, but it can't be easy. Is there anything that could have ever in life prepared you for this?
No, for this, there's no way.
No.
Again, it goes back to, and everybody says that you're not supposed to bury your kids, which absolutely you're not.
And speaking of when the hearse left the funeral home and went to the rec center, you had to pass Scott's grandma's house. So they actually stopped there as well, in front of her house, for just briefly before they went on to the rec center for the visitation. So the funeral home was very good.
Yeah. So they we proceeded to the cemetery, and at the cemetery they had a horse-drawn caisson that they used from one portion of the. Once the hearse went to a certain spot, they unloaded him and then put him on the caisson, and then we continued on to where the burial site was.
We actually had to go in the back entrance of the cemetery because Spring Grove has a tunnel,
Oh yeah,
and they couldn't get all the equipment
The height.
off the road,
due to the height limit too, you couldn't get through there.
and there wasn't enough room to get everybody in that was in the processional
Yeah.
to get off the road. So we had to go in the back way because of that bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Spring Grove has a lot of history as far as Civil War,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff that are buried there.
Yeah. Well, I've been to that part of Ohio through Blue Skies for Good Guys and Gals and Warrior Weekend to Remember, where I met you both. And I can't imagine a more patriotic community than what I have continued to see every time I've been there. On that note, losing a son, sacrificing, your family has sacrificed beyond more than most out there. You want to talk at all about patriotism? When you see it waver, or if you see the possibility.
No, I absolutely. I mean, it means it's completely different to me now looking at what a flag means compared to what it did. I do what?
Explain if you don't mind.
Well, I mean, before you seen the flag, and you were brought up. At least I was brought up to respect the flag. If it's the national anthem's played somewhere, you stand up. You don't sit down. If you have a hat, you remove your hat. I mean, that's just typical. That should be brought up for everybody. But now, when I see that flag, or when they sing that national anthem, it's like, I'm now standing up for my son, for what he did for me. And I always said, the hot days in Ohio when we were there, and it's all hot and muggy and everything else. And I remember talking to Scott. It's like, it's 110 degrees, where they were at, and they're full dressed, gear and everything else, and roughing it and backpacks and everything else. And I said, you know what? I could take this heat. This is nothing compared to what he's going through today, and even at night, when if it got down to maybe 80, 85 degrees, it's still, that's, yeah. So to me, it means just so much that, I don't know how to say it other than, I feel I'm doing it for him. It makes me proud to stand up, and, I'm just afraid that one day, that when somebody disrespects the flag, that I may say something, do something, because everybody don't understand. They don't understand what I'm going through. They don't understand what that means. They don't understand how sick it makes me to my stomach when I see on TV that somebody's burning it. Mm-hmm. So
if you're tuning into this, you are hearing the words of a Gold Star father who lost his son for your freedom. So if you ever want to step on a flag or burn it, please remember these words and rethink that. It affects people in ways you can't even fathom or comprehend. Back to this family. Sorry.
No, you're good. Kelly, I don't know.
I think for me, it, like Don said, just standing up and almost being proud that Scott fought for freedoms for us. Yeah. And then you see people that don't take off their hat. Yeah. And it's like, I think we were at a game and somebody didn't take off their hat, and I leaned over and said, "Take off your hat." Yeah. And he just looked at me and said, "I will not." And I said, "You need to take off your hat." Mm-hmm. But the other thing, when you say Gold Star for us, I'll admit, I didn't know what a Gold Star was. Yeah. I had no idea. Those are things you think, why don't they teach children what that is?
I have the same response. I didn't know, and I don't know why I didn't know, because I've always loved this country. But
right.
Why did I not know?
Right.
Yeah, we had no idea. So I guess that's one thing. I really wish they would teach high school kids in history class. Yeah. You talk about wars. You talk about civil wars. Why can't you talk what this is? What,
bring the sacrifice closer to home, to what it does to families, communities.
Right.
I hope this doesn't offend either of you. I think these sacrifices that so many have made for this country since the beginning are necessary to keep our freedom, but it is real hurt that you've experienced it every day. And
I'll agree with you. Yeah. How do you get freedom and without sacrifice?
It has to be there. Just sucks that it landed on your doorstep.
Absolutely. And I've spoken to other Gold Star families, and I think we all have the same thing without even speaking to anyone and meeting them for the first time and talking to them and just, relaying our story and their story. They say the same thing, two things. It's a club that nobody wants to join, And I just want everybody to remember my son's name, because nobody's saying his name now other than us.
Yeah.
And which that's what we want. We just don't want our kids to be forgotten. And again, for something like this, I'm not saying I agree with war. I don't agree with it, but this was a result, and I want my son to be remembered. And the only way I can do it and make sure that it is for us to continue to say his name, for us to continue to go to these events, if you want to call them that, that can honor him and keep his name out there, is what we want.
Well, if I could share a story of people remembering his name, not long after my wife and I were dating, I have probably a dozen coins have fallen, to include Scott's, that I have always tried to keep one in my pocket, so I remember the fallen, and I feel thankful that I'm here. When I think I'm having a bad day, if I put my hand in my pocket and I touch that coin, I know it's in there. Right now, Paul Zanowick, Lance Corporal Paul Zanowick's in my pocket, but when Lauren saw Scott's coin, and I don't know why that particular coin spoke to her, but she's had it in her pocket. Unless she's scuba diving or in the water or some chance of losing it, it's been in her pocket for probably more than a year now. So,
which we appreciate that.
Yeah.
That somebody's carrying the coin and thinking about it, and
that's the whole reason, again, of why Kelly and Gunny Sam Deeds got together and designed it. We had one design that we thought was what we wanted, and when we presented it to Sam, or when she presented it to Sam, rather, Sam says, is this things that you would want? So
does this represent?
Yeah, we changed the whole coin. So the second, after talking to him, it was changed just because of what we thought, was the best for this. But he had a different route, and the things that were added meant a lot more, and that's what we went with, and that's what we have. But again, that coin is for him to be remembered. Yeah. Because I'm hoping 5, 10, 20 years from now that that coin's going to be, somebody's going to pick it up, somebody's going to look at it, and and going to see it.
I'll always remember, I promise, unless I have, the only way I'm going to lie is if I have Alzheimer's or something and it's beyond my control. Otherwise, I'll remember his name forever, I swear.
So, well,
my God,
thank you. Yeah, thank you. Because like I said, that's the biggest, the biggest worry, that he would be forgotten. And that's why we fought so hard when we were in Ohio to have a portion of the highway dedicated to him. That way, everybody that drives down the highway will see his name. Every morning, they'll see his name when they go by. Maybe they won't remember it. Maybe one time somebody in their car will see it, but that they see his name out there all the time.
And actually, they'll see it and either think it or even say it.
Yeah.
Because if somebody's saying it or thinking it, what's the thing they say? You die twice.
Yeah.
You die the first time, but the second time is when people stop saying your name.
Yeah. So that's why we've done what we did as far as the coin. That's what we did with the highway being changed, or added, his name added to it, portions of that. So even the dispatchers from when I was at the fire department, that portion of the highway was in our area. And if we ever had a run on there, one of the dispatchers knew that I was working. And when he would say the address or the mile marker on the highway, he would specifically say the Donald Scott Memorial Highway portion, and he would give the thing. So he knew. So again, it was so nice to hear someone else. Absolutely. And it was not only being there, but it was being broadcasted over the radio for other departments to hear it and stuff like that. So that meant a lot, knowing that a complete stranger that I probably met once or twice, or he only knows me because of my voice on the radio that that I've ever talked to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it means a lot to have his name remembered. So
I think it means everything. I would love this country to be in a position where every town and every city you saw those names. We just saw Kennedy L. Saunders Lane or Way. I can't remember which of in Waycross. You have Scottsville Highway in Ohio. But every city you go to, I mean, just up the road here, I think we saw Jimmy Buffett Memorial Highway. And I'm not taking away from Jimmy Buffett. I love his music, but I would love to see our fallen heroes memorialized in all of our cities all around this country, just like Martin Luther King, George Washington, and so many other people have names that you see in every city. I would like the specialists, the privates, the airmen, the seamen, the junior enlisted from our branches who have fallen for this country, and the generals memorialized on our roads and in our buildings. I would love it. Should never forget the names.
No. Yeah, I don't. I mean, of course, a burial is a burial. I hate to say that, and yes, it. After the burial, I had a couple choices. I could, I could climb in a bottle and forget life.
Did you do that for a while?
No. That's one thing I never did. Because, of course, my wife, the kids, my other two kids.
Yeah.
I still had a career that I was trying to keep together. So that, that's what prevented me from doing anything like that.
Yeah.
It was very hard to go back to work after being off for, I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it was.
Yeah, I don't even remember.
Just because of
questions.
Well, not only the questions, but the memories and the people that he knew in the city that he had touched. And now I'm back in that same city again. People are talking, hey, is that the father of the guy that was killed? And we're, and that's what I heard. There was in our ambulance, we were transporting someone, and I could hear the woman in the back. I was driving, and she asked, hey, is that the guy? And not that it, it's just that I didn't know that I was ready for that. Or, I of course I had tattoos to for him. And, some woman, I don't know if she was drunk. I don't know her situation. She was bad enough that she needed an ambulance, which I had not a problem with that. And that's what I was there for, to do my job. And, she was smarting off to me, and I reached out to talk to her, to do what I usually do as a paramedic. And she seen my tattoo, and she started, really giving me a lot of grief over it until she read the very top of it.
R.I.P., son.
Yes. After she read that, her whole demeanor changed.
Yeah.
Because I think she realized that, it's just not it's something special to me.
It's not an Army Strong tattoo.
Correct. I'm not making a statement for anybody else. Mm-hmm. Again, it's to remind me and remember my son.
Which, I wear this necklace, and I do wear it so people will ask, oh, is that an origami? Yes, it is an origami. Yeah. I said, but more importantly, I wear it, and I'll proceed to tell them about Scott. And it's amazing that people don't know what to say to you. Like, they get really quiet, or they're like, oh, okay, and then they just walk away. And I think we had this conversation that
go ahead.
If you don't know what to say when somebody says that to you, like, oh, we're a Gold Star family, we lost Scott in 2010 in Afghanistan, I know it's just as hard for them and it's a shock for them, but just to say, tell me something about your hero. And you'd probably be surprised at the stories you get. They're not all gloom and doom. They're fun stories, I think one of the topics we didn't touch on was that Scott had a nickname, and Scott's nickname was Sunshine.
Mhm.
You know, he had gold hair and he just, you know, his hair was always perfect. And what the letter say? It was always better.
Second day, 2 days without washing.
2 days without washing. Yeah. I mean, so it's not all gloom and doom. The coin that Lauren carries, there's a whole story behind each portion of, you know, it's got green for Army, it's got the 513, which is where we're from. He used to say, I'm going home to the 513. There's a Purple Heart in the county that we used to live in. He had the tattoo of the state of Ohio on the left calf, the tattoo of 513 between two monkey arms on an arm. It also says remembrance is the highest form of honor on there. But one of the biggest things I tell people is the reason that we chose gold for that coin is that his nickname was Sunshine, and now you have some sunshine in your pocket. So not all stories are bad and gloom and doom, but for you somebody just to say, tell me something about your hero means a lot to a Gold Star family.
Yeah. Thank you. You know, Lauren quoted you when she proclaimed Roanoke Island as America's first.
Oh, you did?
Island. She quoted you in front of the county commissioners, and she said, I don't remember exact words, but something in the words of a Gold Star family, remembrance is the highest form of honor, and I'm going to misquote her, but I know she did not misquote you. She quoted you when she went.
Oh, that's awesome.
County commissioners. I was standing in the room, kind of very nervous. So, but I definitely saw that happen. And just to draw a timeline, you and Don were married about a year before he went to boot camp.
Well, we met about a year before boot camp. We were actually married after.
Okay.
You know, just divorce things. We both through, you know, you don't always want to jump right back into to marriage. We were together and actually living together.
And so this, very new in your marriage, became your reality.
Yeah. And it was hard. I think at one point when we weren't, at one point it was tough, and I had to look at him and say, this is hard.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this. And I'm not sure if it was a reality check for myself or for him, but it was like, oh, we both kind of need each other at this point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was definitely, that was tough. That was
man
tough.
In the world, he maybe not could have done it without you, but I like to think you being here was, you guys really needed each other. And
yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying it's not rough. I mean, it is. You know, we go from the what we call angelversary date to 30 days later would have been his birthday, and Halloween, which happened to be his favorite. Then you have Thanksgiving 30 days. Then you have Christmas 30 days after that. So that kind of whole stretch right there is rough, even this many years later.
Yeah. Purple Heart recipient we spoke to a few days ago, her alive day is April 2nd, 2010. And she's married to a different person than she was when she was injured, and they have a wonderful marriage and mixed family of kids. But leading up to that day, without ever mentally processing it, her SUDS level, her anxiety goes really up, and she has issues. And when she was saying that, I was one of my alive days is April 4th, 2011. So I was able to completely connect and understand. And I don't remember ever thinking about it. I just get moody, and in a few cases, one case necessarily so, but I got violent, and but I wasn't really sure where that's coming from. And I think maybe it's not something we're processing.
Right.
And you as a family, that's significantly more, because that is the ultimate sacrifice. I believe every Purple Heart, living Purple Heart, even the ones I know that are burnt head to toe, missing eyeballs, still know that our Purple Heart is watered down compared to Scott's. It is. There's no other way to say it. But because I'm here.
But we look at those people and just, I don't.
I don't want
We've had the conversation, and it's like,
Yeah.
how do they still have the good attitude? You know,
Yeah, I don't want to downplay
it.
I don't want to downplay a Purple Heart. They're just as
What about the connection?
high on my shelf
to each other.
to them. Yeah, it's
Gold Stars and Purple Hearts, I think, are unique in their connection.
They are, and I do feel like, especially Blue Skies has found a way to help Purple Hearts in a way see, because in reality, a lot of times the Purple Heart, there was deaths.
Yeah, no,
there were deaths in that situation for you that you earned your Purple Heart, and I'm 100% positive that there is some survivor guilt going there, but
100% right.
But in the situation, it like Blue Skies where they're intermingled, they actually see that we are still moving on. We're not saying it's not easy, and they can see in certain situations it's not easy, but they see that we are still moving on, that we actually can laugh, that we can and have some good times and find some other joys in life. That it is a way to help a Purple Heart heal. Do you know what I mean? And for us, it's nice to see that, you know, to get to talk to some of these Purple Hearts and in a way kind of be an extended family, you know, if you need something, if that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, you both have been amazing to me and my wife, and not only will I never forget Scott, I'll never forget either of you. Someday maybe I'll meet your other children, but man, thank you for having us in your home. I've learned so much more about Scott being here, and Lauren and I, the mission we're doing it's not easy on either of us. It's particularly hard on me in certain instances, but I know it's very hard on her too. But I feel like, especially when we talk to some of the Vietnam guys, we can never let our country do to its service members what it's done in the past. And I think it's the voices of you two and me and people who have either been wounded by our enemy or paid the ultimate sacrifice, and the families left behind to try to make an understanding of it. But if our voices aren't heard, our country is finicky, our people are finicky, and I feel like we run a genuine risk of losing what we're all about here and what freedom is.
Right.
And
what it takes to get that freedom in the long run. Yeah.
Is there anything, if you had the ear of every high school senior in the country right now, from every walk of life, male and female, what would you tell them?
What do you, I mean, you would like to say, you know, honor your country. I mean, but I don't want to say that falls on deaf ears, but I just don't know if the importance is starting at home for them to get to the point to realize how it is that you know, there's a reason why they say that, you know, honor your country.
Yeah.
And the respect that you should have for it, I don't know if it's there. I don't know why it's such an issue for certain people to say how they, you know, they love the country. And but you know, I don't know.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, I think everybody should do what they want to do or follow their dreams. I get it, but you know, don't
ever shit on the people in
yeah, absolutely. Don't Oh, absolutely. You know, you gotta remember that there's a reason that you're where you are now because of what somebody else years ago has done for you. And if you don't realize that, then you know that's on you. That's your fault.
I guess honestly, there's a lot of, for me, it would probably be, you know, there's a book about that talks about all of like the Medal of Honor recipients and what they've been through, and Purple Hearts and what they've been through, is just take a moment and read one of those books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, take a week, read one of those books,
Yeah.
and understand what they did. How they fought, why they fought, what they went through when they fought for this country, so that you can go and drink a beer, so that you can go and pick any college you want to go to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to pick any career. Just take a week. And I can recommend lots.
Same. We're not asking them to follow Brandon's lead and while he's dead, pick up a rifle and get in his shoes. That's a lot to ask of a high school senior.
Right.
But to educate yourself on people like Scott.
Right.
Keep that not far in mind and, like you said, say his name.
Yep.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Is this all right?